Hello class, welcome back. Let's get started with our next section. In this part, we're going to talk about theoretical perspectives. We're going to talk about some main definitions that are going to be used throughout the entire semester. We'll start with what is a paradigm. So a paradigm is essentially a perspective for looking at the world around you and understanding society or your community or an organization. If you think about it in this way, you can think about how, if we put on maybe rose-colored glasses, everything turns kind of pink and it gives you a different perspective. And you changed out your glasses, you put on yellow glasses and it gives you a slightly different perspective. The world doesn't change, but your understanding of reality and how it fits together is different than in a different paradigm. So a lot of times in sociology, you might hear something like, we have three main paradigms in sociology, and we do. And those are symbolic interaction, structural functional, and social conflict theories. Now, the theory themselves is a little bit more concrete definition, I guess you could say, or a little bit more stricter definition of a paradigm. A theory is essentially the how and why facts about your world, the social world, are related to each other and fit together. Most of the time, you're going to have either macro level or micro level paradigms. In this case, structural, functional, and social conflict are our macro level paradigms. And symbolic interaction is our micro level paradigm. Now, macro means large and micro means small. So when we talk about a macro level perspective in terms of sociology, we're talking about looking at it from the societal level, from the broad perspective, from a large scale perspective. When we talk about a micro level perspective, we're talking about individual interactions, about a more detailed, smaller scale perspective in how you're going to discuss how and why facts about the world or society relate to each other. So a paradigm, again, is our broad perspective of or interpretation. A theory is, the kind of how and why facts about the world fit together. Sometimes these can be very detailed constructions of maybe an organization or a community or some societal event. Or it can be a very large scale or macro level theory that talks about how society as a whole reacts. So when we talk about something like social conflict theory, of which Marx is most notably connected to social conflict theory, being this one, that's a macro level perspective. And really, when we talk about social conflict, we're talking about conflict between two opposing groups. In this case, it is the haves and the have-nots. The bourgeoisie and the proletariat, these two opposing groups that when their interests, their needs, their perspective on the world stand in contrast to each other and are essentially antagonistic, meaning they antagonize each other. They're in conflict with each other. Structural functional paradigm is also another macro level perspective, so large scale. We're talking about society as a whole. But structural functional theory asserts that the society is essentially everybody in it, and everything that we do is a part of a working whole. And that if something goes amiss with one part of the society, some kind of problem with, say, laborers who do the majority of the blue-collar work, then therefore the society, if we were to omit them, the society as a whole would no longer be functional. But if you look at it from the perspective, or you take the analogy of a body, you would see that we need kind of all the different pieces to our body for our body to work functionally as a whole. If we have some kind of problem, say with our liver, and have liver damage, our body then becomes dysfunctional. And so what they're trying to say with the structural functional paradigm or theory is that we need all the components to our society for our society as a whole to be functional. Now, the other end of the spectrum is the symbolic interactionist perspective, and that is the micro level perspective. And when we talk about micro level, we're talking about the everyday interactions between you and I and everybody else. And how that everyday interaction becomes a cumulative understanding of how the world works. So I like to give the example of our everyday interactions here in California. When you walk by most people here in California, you don't smile at them, they don't smile at you. There's not a hello or there's not a hi. People don't wave. People don't have casual conversations with other people they don't know. But you go somewhere else, for example, to the south or to some more rural area that's a smaller city or community, and you may have almost every single person you come across say hello, smile, gesture to you. And it's those repetitive actions over time that create the society that you or I live in. And so it's more of a cumulative effect, right? But we're starting from that micro level perspective. So hopefully you kind of understand those. We're still in chapter 1, so you should be able to kind of follow along and find those within the chapter. And now we're going to be moving on to the scientific method. And actually, I think I'm going to leave that as the shortest video that we have, and we'll start our next video as the scientific method. See you in a minute, because I know you're doing all these back to back.